What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down 3 tips for every role in Valorant, because knowing your role and how to play them correctly is the most important thing that you can be doing in each and every game to get guaranteed consistent value and also consistently climb as a result. But the GameLeap website will help you consistently carry instead, with in-depth advanced VOD reviews, tips and tricks, mechanical guides, and much more. Don't miss out on this insane 50% off sale in the links down below, but without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the first role in Valorant, we got none other than the Duelist. Now, Duelists would consist of characters like Jett, Reyna, Phoenix, and Raze. They have tools to do damage, take aggressive engagements, and always be the front line. And this goes into our first tip for every single Duelist. You always need to be the entry for your team. If you're scared at the choke, just standing around and your team is already committing to a point and they die first, not only did you not capitalize on your abilities to more than likely get kills and get numbers advantage, your teammates' valuable post-plant utility is going to be completely lost in the process. And as a Duelist, you literally have to always be going first, and you can't be afraid to take duels. That means being confident in yourself and confident in your mechanics. Now, the biggest thing that you need to master as a Duelist, though, is counter strafing. It is probably more important on a Duelist than any other role. Of course, it's important on every single role, but a Duelist is often going to be swinging around corners and aggressively clearing sight. If you aggressively swing around a corner and your counter strafing is not on point, the enemy that's just standing there is going to be able to just click you in the head. So that is so important for you to master, and I would highly suggest just jamming the brand new FFA mode. It is so great for mastering counter strafing. Just run around and practice swinging people, practice being aggressive, practice turning the corner and still hitting the headshot after that perfect counter strafe. That is how you're going to be extremely effective as a Duelist. Now, on top of that though, even though you are an entry as a Duelist, you still need to be keeping track of where your allies are. It's important that you're not clearing the site when you have no one to refrag for you, which is something that another role needs to do every single time. I'm going to get to that later. But if you're a Duelist and you're going in alone ahead of your team and they're still playing default or trying to play for picks or looking or baiting utility on another site, and you're just pushing on and you get 1 kill and die, you're actually throwing, because we need your utility to clear out the site. And if your teammates can't take space with the value that you're getting, then your entry was actually pointless, and then they're gonna have to enter on a site without your powerful utility that can help you clear it. Now, last up for Duelist, you just gotta make hyper sure that you are going to clear everything on site. Make sure that no corners left unchecked, because a lot of players will follow you and you will set the precedent. And let's say that you just run straight past the corner and don't even check it, and an enemy's camping there with the judge. Because you didn't check it, a lot of your allies might assume that you did, and they're gonna follow you as well, and they're all gonna die to the judge. So make sure that you're checking every single corner you possibly can so that you can completely clear sight and make it an actual safe area. Now, moving on to the next role for you, we have the Initiator. And the Initiator has 2 characters currently in Breach and Sova, but there's going to be another Initiator soon in Sky. Now, what Initiators want to accomplish is, first off, they are the characters that really set up engagements. They have some sort of initiation, whether it's a recon dart, a flying flash, or maybe just a breach's stun. These players set up the Duelist, and they really have abilities to help clear sight. Now, as an Initiator though, it is your job to always refrag a Duelist. If you have a team composition with multiple Duelists, usually they're gonna go in together, but you should be the one immediately after the Duelist and make sure that you're refragging. Yes, you wanna capitalize on your abilities, but you also wanna make sure that when the Duelist sets you up for a proper engagement, or they get you that information about where an enemy is, you can convert on that and kill them as well. And let's not forget that you are dictating engagements based on tempo. You're gonna use your abilities to set this tempo, and it's really important that you communicate with your allies as an Initiator almost more than any other role. Say things like, hey, wait up, let's use my drone to go in. Or, hey, I'm gonna flash this corner, you ping that corner, and then you flash it and then they go in. This is really clear, concise comms about exactly what you're doing, and you're setting the pace of the fight. You're making everyone go in off your tempo, because the worst thing in the world is for your Reyna to run in and die right away, and you're like, hey, I could have droned. Well, you need to speak up and you need to be clear and concise about that. Now, the one thing that you should probably be always doing as an Initiator is playing with your team. Initiators don't really lurk and they almost never flank. it is incredibly important that an initiator is playing directly with someone so that they can better enable them, because initiators are probably the biggest enablers in the entire game. This is why if you really want to climb, I would highly suggest as an initiator player to duo with someone else, another role, and the best role would probably be a duelist, because an initiator duelist combo just has so much potential with the duelist going in and an initiator setting them up for cleaner engagements. Then moving on to the next role that we got for you in this video is none other than Sentinel. Now, Sentinel consists of characters that have extremely powerful utility that are typically some of the most impactful in the game and are fundamental for meta-based strategies. Examples of Sentinels would be Killjoy, Sage, and Big Daddy Cypher. Now, as a Sentinel, you have a great deal of responsibility, even if your responsibility isn't going in aggressively and clicking every head. You see, the first mistake that Sentinels are making is they're aggressively challenging angles and dying first or second. Sentinels need to be dying exponentially later in the game, because something really important that you need to understand about Sentinels is the longer that they get to save their abilities, the more powerful they become. The later in the game, the less people they are, the more value that these abilities can get. For example, when you have a trip, right, and the entire enemy team breaks that trip, you know relative where one person is in the sea of an entire team, right? But imagine there's only one person. Imagine there's only one person on the enemy team left alive, and then they hit the trip. You know exactly where that person is, and you know exactly the angles that they can peek from. This is just one example of many. I mean, there's a lot of different examples with Sentinel. Imagine like a Sage Wall. Yes, the Sage Wall can get some value right off the bat, but how strong is it if you can block off the entire long sight line and push and defuse a spike? That is something that's incredibly powerful, and this is why Sentinels really want to make sure that they're alive later in the game. If not for that, also for just the information that they can provide, specifically Killjoy and Cypher. Now, one thing that you always need to do, especially when you're on attack, is as a Sentinel, you need to be guarding the flanks. You need to be putting a guard, either a turret that is guarding the entire back line, or two trips setting them up on both sides for both potential flank avenues. Now, I know it can get tiring running around the map, running across the map, setting up a trap here, setting up a trap there, but it's so important that you do this. And sometimes players will get lazy. Sometimes players will do it a couple of rounds and then they'll stop doing it, and then they'll do it again. And the thing is, the one time when you stop doing it, that's when you're gonna get flanked. It's gonna happen every single time. That's just the way it is. If you are not disciplined with your trips, you are going to get caught off guard and throw an entire round because you didn't guard these flanks. Make sure that you're putting your traps in a position where they can't get jumped over, and you make sure you're putting your turret in a position where it can't get avoided. And as Sentinels, if you can do that and capitalize on your abilities and die very infrequently or die the least on your team, you're gonna have so much impact because you're gonna bring such stability to the team and bring so much value with your abilities. Now, moving on to the last but certainly not least role in the entire game, we have Controller. And right now we got 3 controllers: Viper, Omen, and Brimstone. Now, of course, controllers are more commonly known as just smokers. They smoke off sight lines, they can allow you to make certain plays with smokes, they can block off LOS and things like that. Now, specifically on attack, it's pretty obvious what most smokers should do. They should block off the really powerful angles, like an angle that an Opera would control or someone holding a Vandal from a long distance, so you don't have to challenge that angle. It's one less angle that people have to worry about. Specifically, high ground angles are even more threatening than long angles, because high ground angles allow enemies the most fundamental advantage of all, which is hiding most of their body with natural cover while also being able to see the maximum amount of area, even if they're hiding themselves. Now, that's pretty obvious, but something that a lot of controller players really lack on is how they're going to use their smokes on defense, because there are 2 really powerful ways you can use smokes on defense to get tons of value. The first way is just to smoke the openings that enemies are pushing near. If you smoke the opening of mid, for example, on Haven defense, the enemies are not going to push in blind. And if they do, you could of course spam them out with phantoms or things like that. But a lot of times they're not going to push in because they're going to be walking through blind. They're not going to have their crosshair correct, and they're just going to die. It's going to be really easy for you to shut them down. It greatly disincentivizes them from pushing in, and that can give your team time to rotate. It can stall them out and give you some free value in the process. Now, specifically with Omen, who is probably the most powerful smoker right now in the current meta, he needs to be smoking on defense for players even if he's nowhere near them, because unlike the other smokers, he can smoke for players across the entire map. So let's say you're all the way on A site and your team is getting harassed on B site, you need to be smoking off the default entrance to the point so that your allies not only have less angles that they need to guard, but the enemies that haven't pushed through yet are less incentivized from pushing through because your allies could be able to capitalize on it. Now, the second way, and perhaps even a more powerful way in ranked play to use your smokes, is to smoke off an aggressive angle and push up and take space. We could use that same Haven mid example where instead of smoking off your choke, you're smoking off the enemy window, and you and another person are pushing up through mid as someone from your garage maybe flashes out like a Reyna, and you challenge everyone grass. That is an incredibly powerful thing to do because if enemies don't respect that or challenge that, you can easily get tons and tons of value, and it's a play that you see a lot as players start to climb the ladder. Typically using smokes in more dynamic ways, whether it's an aggressive play or just to smoke an ally out or even to bait enemies. There's a lot of different things that controller players can do with their smokes, but just like the Sentinels, you gotta make sure you don't die right off the bat, because if you are like your only smoke on your team, for instance, and you peek a long angle and get opt, all of a sudden the remaining members of your team not only have to fight in a numbers disadvantage, but they have to do it without smokes up against an op, which is very, very difficult. So definitely think twice before you do those kind of things. You can lose Duelist here and there, and you can afford even to lose an Initiator, even if that's pretty rough. But Controller and Sentinel are two of the classes that really want to value their life more than just about anything else until they convert on their abilities. After that, after you take side control, you can afford to play a lot more aggressive and have someone refrag off of you. Now, our resident Radiant player Tanner has done in-depth agent courses over tons of agents across all the different roles, so if you want to master them and learn from one of the best players step by step, go check it out in the links down below with our special 50% off sale. But that's all we got for today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.